expected points, clean sheet odds, and who is the best captain. This video has got all of the information you need to know ahead of Game Week 13. Starting off then with the goalkeepers, and the way I'm going to structure this video, we're going to have a look at the top players just for Game Week 13 in isolation by position. Then we're going to look at the best for the next 5 game weeks, because I think if you're looking to make a transfer in FPL, you should be making a transfer with at least the next 3 to 5 game weeks in mind. So hence why looking at a 5 game week view. And then goalkeepers, not so important because you can see there's some cheap goalkeepers mixed in already. But I'm also going to look at the top cheap players in each position. So top cheap defenders, top cheap midfielders, and top cheap forwards. Because I think, yes, most of the lists are going to be dominated by the most expensive players in the position. That's natural, I guess. You know, the most expensive premium players in each position are naturally going to be the ones that are top for expected points. I'm just going to turn my light down a little bit. It's a bit too... There we go. So goalkeepers then for Game Week 13. The top goalkeeper for expected points is Sells. He's got Ipswich at home. Nottingham Forest have been pretty damn good defensively so far this season. Obviously conceded 3 against Arsenal, but that's Arsenal at the Etihad, right? Ipswich at home is a completely different ball game for Nottingham Forest, and he's projected to do really well. Flecken, who of course kept a clean sheet, I'm very grateful for in Game Week 12. Apart from Salah, who I had as my captain, he was the only other player in my team that returned this week. So I think for me with Flecken, I'm going to keep hold of him for one more game week, and then he's got Aston Villa in Game Week 14, and I think that's probably the time where I will look to sell him. For Bruggen, I've spelled that wrong. He's got Southampton at home. Vicario's got Fulham at home. Raya's up there. Onana, Sanchez, and Henderson is up there as well. Let me know in the comments who your current FPL goalkeeper is. So that's the one game week view for Game Week 13. But like I said, when you're making transfers in FPL, it's important to look at like a 3 to 5 game week time horizon. And here we've got the top goalkeepers for that period of time. And we can see Raya, Ederson, Martinez, Muric, Sanchez, Sells, Pickford, and Verbruggen. I've always said this, but I think I say this in every video. You're probably bored of me saying it. But the best goalkeepers in FPL are the ones in my mind that keep like an average amount of clean sheets and get consistent saves. And I think the likes of Raya and Ederson are kind of goalkeepers that you'd back to keep, well, maybe not Ederson, but Raya is one that will probably keep a fair few clean sheets, but not necessarily get saves bonus points. So he gets sort of one side of the equation in terms of points. And I think of someone like Flecken, who has 1 clean sheet in 12 games this season, but has made the most saves in the Premier League. His points will be propped up by saves bonus. And I think what you want in an FPL keeper is one that gets both. One that gets a reasonably decent amount of clean sheets, say, just in the double digits. I always think 9 to 12 is a decent amount to aim for. And then makes consistent saves as well. And the 2 goalkeepers, they're not necessarily on this list for the next 5 because my projection's season long. My 2 favourite goalkeepers in FPL, I'll always say this throughout the season, are Jordan Pickford and Onana of Man United. Because I think the 2 of those strike the perfect balance of a team that can actually keep clean sheets. I think both Everton and Man United this season have proven they can do that. And both Onana and Pickford make a decent amount of saves every game. So those would be my 2 favourite goalkeepers for the season. But for the next 5 game weeks, you can see the order there. I just wanted to again talk about my goalkeeper theory there, because I think that stood the test of time in like fantasy football history, regardless of the format, regardless of the fantasy football game in particular. The best goalkeepers in the game keep an average amount of clean sheets and then get consistent saves. Defenders up next then, and again we've got us basically dominated by Nottingham Forest defenders. They're heavily backed to keep, I think, a clean sheet against Ipswich, at least in the fantasy football hub model. We've got Porro up there as well from Tours. They've got Fulham at home, which I'd suggest is a pretty decent fixture for them. Of course, Porro's off the back of a goal and a clean sheet against Man City, so that might be playing into his favour in terms of expected points as well. And then the Forest defenders, you've got Alex Moreno, Milenkovic, Murillo and Aina. Those are obviously the 4 starting Nottingham Forest defenders. Their fixtures do turn a little bit, which we'll see in the long term. They won't be in the top for the next 5. Long term, they do shift, but for Game Week 13 in isolation, I do think Forest defenders, well, Sells is the top goalkeeper. You know, this list is dominated by Forest defenders, so that suggests they're going to probably do quite well. For me, my actual favourite Forest defender is not Alex Moreno, it's Milenkovic. Milenkovic has put up the best expected goal involvements of all of the Forest defenders so far this season. He just hasn't actually come away with a goal yet. I think it's only a matter of time before he does, because He's absolutely massive and looks like a real threat from set pieces, basically. Other players mixed in there, Estupinian, Gabriel and Udogie as well. You can see Porro and Udogie both with Fulham at home. Gabriel, I think Arsenal could keep a clean sheet in pretty much all of their next 6 or 7 fixtures. West Ham away, no exception there. And same with Estupinian for Brighton. You know, he's good from an attacking perspective, semi-decent defensively, and they got Southampton at home, which is a really good fixture. So for the next 5 game weeks then, the 3 top defenders overall are kind of the 3 premium most expensive and the defenders you'd expect to be top really. Gabriel, Guardiola and Trent. Then you've got Virgil van Dijk up there as well. I'd actually want to make a rather strong argument for Virgil van Dijk. I think he could well be, probably behind Trent, the best Liverpool defensive option. And Liverpool have been the best defence in the league so far this season. So why would you not pick the best option from the best defence in the league so far this season? I just wanted to plug Van Dijk as an option. I do agree though with Fantasy Football Hub on Gabriel. I think Arsenal, you know, consistently been the best defence in the league now for the past 2 seasons. We've had, like I said, Liverpool the best this season, but we have had a rather small sample size of just 12 games so far. And to their credit, Arsenal kept a clean sheet in Game Week 11 and also, in Game Week 12. And also their fixtures are really good coming up. And I would also say, just looking back to Arsenal's previous fixtures this season, there have been I wouldn't say it's unlucky, but sort of one-off moments that have prevented them from keeping clean sheets. So red cards when they kick the ball away, Saliba getting sent off against Bournemouth, stuff like that. They are individual mistakes in some cases from players, but they're kind of one-off incidents that you wouldn't expect to happen consistently across the season. Whereas, you know, I think their run of luck is going to be better for the rest of the season, and hence they should keep more clean sheets. I felt like I was writing an essay in English class then saying hence. Other players on this list got Calafiori as well, who could be a decent option for Arsenal. I do like Timber. I think he's a good option at 5.5 million, so slightly cheaper than Calafiori. To be honest, I would probably go for Timber over Calafiori and just save the money. Pedro Porro, he's up there. Matty Cash and, well, Nathan Ake's on there, but who else in that Man City defence is going to start by Guardiola, I'd suggest, is a bit of a lottery. Okay, next up we got cheap defenders. So what I've done here is set a filter for 5 million and below across the next 5 game weeks. We've got Matty Cash, Aït-Nouri, Gusto, who was benched for Chelsea in Game Week 12, but I think he'll be back for Game Week 13, particularly considering that Reece James is injured. Got Udogie up there as well. He's obviously just snuck under 5 million. Leif Davis, who, well, at the time of watching it, at the time of this, I've got the Man United game on at the moment, and he's just rolled his ankle off the ball, so he could well be injured. So one to monitor there. Milenkovic and Marilla are up there as well. Despite having a bit of a tougher run of fixtures after Game Week 13, they're still up there as some of the top defenders. So yeah, these are your best cheap ones for the next 5. Now, after another brace, it feels like Salah is scoring every week at the moment. Even when he doesn't even play that well, he seems to be scoring goals. And to be honest, you know, I watched that Southampton game and I don't actually think he had his best game, but he still came away with a brace. Could have actually had 4 goals in that game. And I genuinely don't even think he played that well. I don't know. It's just, yeah, weird concept I've got around Mo Salah. Obviously, total respect to the guy, absolute baller. And yeah, he's the top midfielder for expected points in Game Week 13. He does have Man City, but we've seen how Man City have performed defensively in recent weeks, right? And I just don't see why Salah couldn't score against them. Got Cole Palmer in second. There is very little between the top 3 midfielders here, Salah, Palmer and Saka. And I'd say it's actually really close on the captaincy. We'll talk a little bit more about that because obviously Haaland is going to be a captaincy option as well. I'd suggest he's a captaincy option every week. So we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the video. But Salah is the top midfielder according to Fantasy Football Hub, followed by Palmer, then Saka. We got Son, Mbeumo, Bruno Fernandes, Brennan Johnson and Kulusevski up there as well. I think this is around what I'd expect to see for the top midfielders for this week. For the next 5 game weeks, it's no real surprise to see, again, Salah, Palmer, Saka, Son leading the list. I mean, these are the 4 best midfielders in the game, and you'd expect them to be top most weeks. Well, for each week, basically. Brennan Johnson is interestingly up there as well. Didn't even start against Man City, but he still came away with a goal. Tottenham, after that Man City game now, have decent fixtures coming up, so he could be a decent option. Bruno Fernandes, Phil Foden and Mbeumo round off those top midfielders for the next 5. And then we got a view of the top cheap midfielders. And we already saw Brennan Johnson up there as one of the top midfielders. And of course, coming in, I filtered this under 7 million because I count midfielders under 7 million as cheap ones. So he's top, followed by Kulusevski. Eze is, I think the points model for Fantasy Football Hub is predicting Eze to be back for Game Week 13. guess we'll see on that one. If he is back, I can't lie, I think he's a good option. Madueke, I'd say of all the Chelsea winger options, Neto, Sancho, Mudryk, Madueke is the one that seems to be playing the most minutes. So if I were to pick a Chelsea wide midfielder, it'd probably be Madueke. There's no Semenyo on this list because he's picked up his 5th yellow card, so he's going to be out for one game, which kind of ruins his expected points total. So the best midfielder sub 6 million looks like it's Rodgers, as you'd probably expect. Garnacho's up there as well, who interestingly started for Man United in the Ipswich game. But I would always say about this Man United team under the new manager, I just have no idea how they're going to line up week on week. They've got so many options that could play in those forward positions and also play at wing back as well. They had Amad Diallo, for example, playing at right wing back today. It's just a bit crazy in terms of how they would line up. So I'd say outside of Bruno Fernandes, I'd probably avoid Man United players for now because you just don't know how they're going to line up. And I think, yeah, if you're buying midfielders you want to play in your team, you actually want them to be playing in the Premier League. And I'm not sure you can guarantee that's going to happen with Garnacho. And then Ismail Assar, who of course scored in game week 12 against Aston Villa in Matoma. Brighton's got decent fixtures. He's on this list as well. On to the forwards then. And for the first time this season, Haaland isn't the top forward for expected points. That honour goes to Chris Wood. Ipswich at home, I think Chris Wood is a good option. For game week 13 at least, I think he's possibly a sell for future game weeks. But at least for game week 13, I would definitely have him in my team. And I'm owning him. I'm definitely going to be using him. I think the benching he got was just because of the international travel. And, you know, they obviously didn't score. So I think he's going to be back well. With the winning he's starting, I think he's going to be back in the team and ready to go for game week 13. It was just a case that he was rested because of his travel. You know, he plays for New Zealand. So that's basically the longest possible journey you can make on an international break. So I think that was probably the reason he was benched. Haaland, Liverpool away is obviously pretty much, based on defensive numbers this season, the toughest fixture you could ask for. But I just wouldn't rule out him scoring in that game. We'll see the stats in a bit later when I go through the captaincy statistics, because he's one of, I think, 4 captaincy options this week. He's still putting up really good underlying numbers, and I think it's such fine margins that he's not coming away with goals. He hit the crossbar against Spurs and missed a really good chance at the beginning of the game. And I think both of those were like inches away from going in. Obviously, hitting the crossbar is inches away from going in. Vicario made a good save to deny him in the first half. I actually think he is putting up really good underlying numbers. And I think it's only a matter of time before he gets back amongst the goals again properly. And I just think he can score against any opposition. He doesn't have the best record against Liverpool, I'll admit, but I still think there's a good chance he could do well there. I think Isak across the rest of the season or the next 5-6 game weeks or whatever is the best of the rest after Haaland in terms of forwards. You know, Newcastle, they're pretty good going forwards. He's on penalties, going to start every game. I really like him as an option. We've got Wissa, who I do like, but he got subbed early in game week 12, and I think that could become a running trend. I think he was subbed for Thiago early, wasn't he? I think that could be a bit of a trend coming forwards, or going forwards with Wissa. So I proceed with caution on him. Cunha, I mean, the guy looks exceptional. Obviously, so does João Pedro. Solanke is a bit hit and miss with like the average position that he's playing in. Some games he plays as the out-and-out number 9 and is like really in the box for all of the chances. And other times he's dropping really deep, depending on the opposition and how Ange wants to play. So he's a little bit hit and miss. And then Nicholas Jackson, I really like him as an option. I mentioned him already in my buy and avoid video, but he is a little bit of a yellow card machine. And he's on 4 yellow cards at the moment. So one more yellow card, that's a game ban for him. And he loves picking up a yellow card for kicking the ball away. Just an observation I've made about him. For the next 5 game weeks, though, well, my narrative is sort of decided. Well, the narrative I spoke about there is sort of backed up here. So Haaland is the best forward for the next 5 game weeks. I think that's fair enough. Isak is the best of the rest, as I said. And Cunha emerges as, well, I think the best cheap forward. I don't actually need to go through the best cheap forwards because you can see them there. Cunha is ahead of Wood for the next 5 game weeks. Not a whole lot in it, but I'm considering making the transfer. I don't own Cunha currently, and he's killing me. And I do own Wood, and he's not done anything for the last couple of games. So I'm going to give Wood one more chance against Ipswich, and then assess from there, I think. Watkins is up there as well. What I would say about Watkins is I do like him. I just think he's too expensive. There's no point buying him in my mind over Isak and Jackson, because I think Isak's actually probably better than Watkins in terms of goals he will score. And then Jackson and Watkins are probably playing around the same level this season. The only reason I would go for Watkins is if he takes penalties. And to be fair, after seeing Tielemans miss one against Crystal Palace, that could open the door in my mind for Watkins to potentially become the Aston Villa penalty taker. And if that were to be the case, I think he becomes an option in the game again. But that's obviously one to wait and see on. Now, my usual two sources of clean sheet odds weren't actually ready at the time I recorded this video. So Fantasy Football Pundit and Draft Hound weren't quite there in terms of clean sheet odds. But we do have an early output from Fantasy Football Hub. Top teams, we can see on the right-hand side, we've got clean sheet odds there. And on the left, we've got projected goals. Top teams for clean sheet odds at the moment. We've got Nottingham Forest sitting on 45%. Arsenal, I worry that's a little bit overinflated on 67%. But I do think their clean sheet odds are good against West Ham. And then Man United, 47% against Everton. I actually think that's fair enough. I think there's a reasonable chance that Man United could well keep a clean sheet in that game. Who else looks like a decent shout? Chelsea, maybe. Spurs, maybe. Who else we got? Brentford could keep one against Leicester. Brighton, yeah, they got a fair chance against Southampton. I mean, you can see the data there and analyse for yourself. Let me know, actually, in the comments who your favourite defences are going into Game Week 13. And finally, then, we've got the captaincy. And a quick look at FPL review. For the first time, Haaland isn't even in the top 6 players for expected points. The order goes Palmer, Mbeumo, Bruno Fernandes, Salah, Saka, and Son. So that's what FPL review is suggesting. Fantasy Football Hub has got Salah number 1, Palmer number 2. There's 0.1 expected points in it. Saka is 3rd on 6.8. And Haaland is all the way down in 6th place on 6.3. But you can see there is very little in it. So Haaland and Salah are playing each other. So Salah is the home team. He's at Anfield and obviously Haaland's travelling. And what I've done here is put together their underlying numbers in recent games. And it's actually really close this season. I don't think there's a whole lot in it when you look game on game in terms of the underlying numbers that they put up. So I would probably give Salah the edge over Haaland based on that because he's the home team and he also scores more points for getting a goal because he's a midfielder. I think he's a little bit better for bonus points as well. And I also think he's more creative. So he's got more chance of getting assists. So I think there are 4 captaincy options this week. 2 of them are Salah and Haaland. Those are the 2 big premiums in FPL. And I would give Salah the edge out of the 2 of them. I think given that Salah's the home team, Haaland's away, Liverpool definitely in better form and Salah in better form. I'd give him the edge. 2 other options we've got. Cole Palmer and Bukayo Saka. Palmer's got Aston Villa at home and Saka's got West Ham away. Looking at their underlying numbers again, there is not really a whole lot to split it. Although what I would say is that Cole Palmer's returns are probably slightly more weighted towards goals, whereas Saka's are more weighted towards assists. But in fairness, quite a lot of Cole Palmer's goals this season came in one game against Brighton, where obviously he scored the 4 goals. I would say, just by my analysis so far this season, Aston Villa are a tough team to play, right? Whereas West Ham are pretty close to sacking their manager. So I would actually give Saka the edge over Palmer this week. In terms of my captaincy, I don't have these 4 players in my team. I don't have Saka to captain, so I will have to captain Mo Salah, I think, based on that. But if I were making a captaincy decision this week, I'm not going to go all in yet on who I think is the best captain because you've got some midweek games to get through and anything could happen at that time. But if I were to say my captain, it's between, for me at least, Salah and Saka. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. If you did, please leave me a like rating. I think I asked you guys to let me know a couple things in the comments. It was, who is your goalkeeper and which teams do you back to keep a clean sheet? So if you can let me know that in the comments, that'll let me know that you've watched until the end of the video. Just in general, if you enjoyed the video and haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. It should be just there on your screen. And I think that's everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.